Be strong and courageous.
Anywhere you see a gap between what you think might be possible and what is, that's an opportunity for an entrepreneur to dive in.
There are ways to succeed. There are models in entrepreneurship, investing. There are people who have found a path before.
To dream about like what are the talents that you have and what are the things that make you come alive.
That there's actually a generation of warrior entrepreneurs, people that are willing to stand up, to do the hard work, to start a thing, to see a thing through.
Here's our mission, and we're going to take a step forward, just one foot in front of the other, and we're going to build something great.
We can make a difference. Let's do this in our lifetime. Let's see how much positive change we can drive. Good afternoon and welcome to another podcast of Take Your Mountain. Today I have the pleasure of interviewing another one of my partners at Gratuitous Funds, Austin Schmitt. So welcome, Austin. Looking forward to chatting and just sharing a little bit of your story and how that connects to what we're up to.
Yeah, thanks, Jason. It's cool to see this come to fruition. You've been talking about doing a podcast for a while, and to see it actually come to life is fun. You in your element.
Awesome. Well, good. Yeah, I think where we like to start off often is just kind of sharing a little bit of your background. It doesn't need to be a 17-chapter biography, but a little where you came from, how you grew up, and some of the experiences that led you into adulthood.
Cool. Yeah, it won't be 17 chapters. I'm the youngest one of the crew, so I don't have as many chapters as some of you guys do. So yeah, I grew up, I'm Minnesota bred, born and raised, and grew up on the west side of the Twin Cities here. And growing up was pretty much a suburban middle class lifestyle, I would say. It's grew up two parents that were together at the time, raised in a Christian home, going to school, going to church. I was actually homeschooled until I was in 7th grade, full time, and then started going to one of the public schools in the area for music so that I could play sports in the public school. So that was kind of, if you took one class, you could do sports with the public school kids. So started doing that in 7th grade, and then just begged my parents and eventually wore them down to go into public school starting 9th grade. So public schooler after that. Was super active in both sports and music throughout middle school and high school, heavily involved in our church, in our youth group. And I would say I probably lived the lifestyle of having two separate and distinct lives. I had one that came out while I was at school, when I was playing sports and trash talking and flirting with girls. And then I had the life that I lived in the youth group, which was hopefully what every parent wanted their kid to be. So definitely wasn't the most wholesome life on all ends. But at the end of the day, it was really, what I knew was that God loved me and that my heart was for him. And so that was, that took me into the decision to go into Northwestern College here which is now Northwestern University. I didn't get the university credentials. It was just a measly old college when I was there.
Missed it by a year.
I missed it by, it was actually the last year, my senior year, they switched it over, but most of my credits were already in the college days, so I didn't get that. But big rivals with Bethel University, where your alma mater.
Yep.
Pretty sure you beat us in most sports.
Had a few more activities, that's all.
Yeah. So went to Northwestern. I actually started off studying pre-med there. Was really interested in doing both physical therapy and sports medicine type of stuff right out of high school. And that's where I started my college studying, was in that. And then I hit this crazy class that I had heard a lot about, but it was called what was it? Biochemistry? Yeah, biochemistry. And that was when I knew that the medical life was no longer for me. I was in over my head at that point. I knew all about the muscles and the bones and some genetics and stuff like that, but man, when it came to biochem, that was enough. So
Yeah,
I
those
started.
lab sciences can be legit. I think we had to take one or two, and when they
Yeah,
said it's a 3 hour course or a 4 hour course, like other classes, you whiz through the homework pretty quick. Like a 3 hour
yep,
lab, 3 hour lab.
yeah.
It's pretty serious.
It was it was a it was a 3 hour lab. Um, but yeah, so I actually had started a business minor at the time, and I started kind of considering what that would look like to run a sports medicine clinic or do something like that. And for some reason, the business side of things was coming really easy to me. The accounting, the business operations, and the strategy courses and everything, and even just the personal finance classes. Those are my favorite. Those classes were coming extremely easy to me. Um, and yeah, the pre-med stuff was just getting harder and harder. So kind of started to take a hint, and then I actually um, got a really cool experience to go to Haiti during my college years, and that was kind of the final nail in the coffin to switch the major over from pre-med to business and start focusing heavily on that.
So tell me a little bit about that. So why was a trip to Haiti? How did that? Sounds like it was like maybe a mission trip or something. How did that impact your business decisions?
Yeah, great question. My idea of business was kind of abstract at the time. I didn't have any. My dad ran a construction company, but not on the business side, more on the blue collar side. My mom was a swim coach and a homeschool mom, and she kind of did her own business with some seamstress stuff, just kind of making ends meet, a little extra money for the family. So my business uh, idea of what business meant in the world was very slim up until that point because I just had never had a good example of that in my life. Uh, However, when I went so it was actually crazy. So in 2010, if you remember, the big earthquake hit Haiti in January of 2010. And I was in college. I had just finished my sophomore year, and my best friend at the time was a missionary kid from Haiti. And I had always said, man, I'd love to come down and see where you grew up and see your school. I've seen all these pictures, but I've never been there. It'd be cool to go with you over Christmas break sometime. So January or December of 2020 or 2010, he goes, hey, I'm going back. Obviously, Haiti is still rebuilding. It needs a lot of help. And why don't you just come down and hang out and help a little bit? And I did not know what I was getting myself into. I have this, it was my first time out of the country by myself. So I flew to Miami. I slept in the airport overnight. And if you know anything about the Miami airport, it really doesn't sleep. So it was just me laying on the ground on my suitcase overnight, just all these people going past. And I made it down to Haiti, and I had this little notepad from him, and he said, "Okay, so when you get through Haiti security, go through customs, which really isn't customs. Uh, Go outside, go past the UN tanks, and take a right, and we'll be a mile down the road." And I was like, "All right, I've never been here before, so that seems fair enough." Little
Was there
did
like
I know that
body cell service there? Or like,
no, no cell service. It was just, we're going to be in this type of car about a mile away. If you go to this spot, you've gone too far. So I walk out of the Haitian airport in Port-au-Prince and get past the UN tanks and the guys with machine guns and finally find him after probably not sweating as much in my entire life as I did that day, both out of nerves and heat in Haiti. And yeah, found him and had a 4 week experience there, just living his life and helping out wherever I could. Um, And specifically how it relates to business is there was this one conversation that I was having with, it was actually at the home of a couple that owned an orphanage in Haiti. And I was asking, like, man, the world has sent you billions and billions of dollars to recover from this earthquake. Yet it's almost a year later and it looks like the earthquake happened last week. What is going on here? And they talked a little bit about where the aid money goes and things like that, but ultimately what they said was really what Haiti needs to heal is good businesses and not having a bunch of business leaders that are corrupt. And I said, explain that to me a little bit more. And they went in to say, well, you've got a lot of people that see the need that Haiti has for all these different services and these different products. And they come in from other countries and they build their businesses and make a ton of money and then ship that money right back to their home country.
Okay.
And none of that money actually stays in Haiti to make it prosperous and to keep that here. And this is outside of them not having really any natural resources or anything like that. But so it started blowing my mind that good business leadership and good business practices locally in the country could be so transformative to an area or be so harmful to an area, whichever way it was led. So I think the following few months, as I was lying in bed recovering from malaria, I was just thinking a lot about that conversation and thinking about, man, good business leadership, good business services really have the power to transform this world. And I think leading into my career, that just got founded over and over again. That, man, if you can be a good leader, people don't need to do a lot of things, but they do need to work, or they do need to make money, and that is something that we can't ever get away from. But if they can go and make their living at a place that supports them, whether they're at that business for 5 years or 5 months, and helps them get to the next phase of their life and helps them accomplish their goals, dreams, and aspirations, and in the meantime can provide an environment that incorporates family and incorporates a more integrated life. If you have an aunt or uncle that needs help moving, like, yeah, you can have the afternoon. You don't have to take paid time off to go and help them out. They need help moving, and that's just part of life. Now, that can be taken too far in a lot of ways too, and you have to be careful with that. But at the same time, this idea of being in business, being a good leader, having a good product, having a good culture is one of the best ways to transform this world, especially to people that maybe have never experienced that type of thing before. And you can help just love those people through the way that you carry yourself, the way you can conduct business, and the way that you go about your work. Ultimately, it's just a way of honoring what we've been given and stewarding the blessings that we have is to be intentional with how we give that to the next person.
Sure. So, just curious, like with the money that came, was that why all the UN tanks were there? Were they overseeing some of the aid coming in, or are they always there?
I don't really know. It's probably a mixture of that, and I mean, when we were there were multiple riots, and it was safekeeping, like just peacekeeping too. A lot of riots. We took this hike up a mountain one time. We took some like preteen, early teenager orphans up this mountain to a waterfall just to spend the afternoon and hang out and play. And as we were sitting on the mountaintop, you could overlook the city of Port-au-Prince and multiple just billowing clouds of black smoke with people burning tires and dumpster fires and things like that. So I'm sure there's quite a bit of peacekeeping and and resource allocation that was going on there.
Is that just from the general chaos from the natural disaster that there was still lacked order?
Yeah, I think that especially, but that especially during that time, Haiti's always been a pretty
Wild Westy,
dicey place, and a lot of that is from government corruption and things like that. Actually, I just read an article probably about 4 months ago that their entire Congress had vacated. Like there was one person that still was sitting in a seat ruling the government in their Congress, because everybody else had been threatened or they were on the run essentially. So
wow.
I don't think in the last decade it's changed that much, but I'm no expert of it.
Sure. So when this money would come in, I mean, it was just basically just being funneled to anything but legitimate needs, or did they have I'm sure, corruption, you kind of have an idea, but you're not exactly sure what's going on. Like what'd you learn on that side?
Yeah. The only thing that I could, without investigating it more, the rumor on the street was that, well, one of the things that's necessary with that aid money is water. And instead of flying a bunch of water down, you're going to go down to those people that are bringing it in ships, and they're going to go and take the aid money, purchase water. But a lot of that water was owned by foreigners that had water stockpiles at grocery stores and at other convenience stores. And so as they went to buy these cases of water and get that, well, that money is flowing from the aid money coming in to the owners of those businesses that are providing some of the services, and then potentially right outside the borders. So that was the frustration by some of the locals at the time. Who knows how true that is, or if you could actually track it through like that. But yeah, it spurred a heart in me for business and economic development at the same time. Just understanding for the first time, like really seeing it, that money runs the world, like it or not, and we need to be resourced in ways to help people and to love on people, and not for our own good, but for the benefit of other people.
Sure. Was that kind of a personal epiphany that you had through that experience, or was there like somebody, a leader, or somebody you were connected with on that side that you were able to talk through, or was it just kind of some of the realizations you had from your experience?
It was mostly realizations. We did a lot of stuff down there, but yeah, there was a couple business owners. There was a couple conversations I had with, like I said, those kids, or that family that ran the orphanage. And yeah, like the parents of my missionary friend that was down there, that they had lived there for the last 15 years on and off. Every 3 months they came back for a little while, but they had lived there for 15 years. So they kind of saw the demise, and then they also saw the aid help come in, and really the rebuilding of it taking forever. And they started asking questions themselves, which just led into conversations that we were having.
So you're pre-med, thinking about medical school. Then kind of shifting, thinking more maybe business career. You mentioned a couple of things like impact, kind of this desire to make a difference, one way, shape, or form, and intuitively try to figure out the most efficient way, or how you could do that, or new ways to do that. Where do you know where that came from, or kind of like not everyone necessarily has that viewpoint or desire, but like kind of where that came from, or?
I'm not really sure where it came from. What I would say is that in some ways the desire sparked to, well, I'll say this. So I'm in the church world and the Christian world quite a bit, and I see this separation a lot of times between the business people over here and the people that are in occupational ministry over here, and then some nonprofits that have a really good purpose and ministry over here.
Yeah.
And what is frustrating is that disconnect between all these different entities, I guess, really causes people to look at the church or Christ followers and be like, well, what the heck is going on? You've got these like really smart business leaders. You've got church that I either like or don't like because I've been hurt by it. And you've got these NGOs over here that have a different mission. Like, well, what if we took good business practices and put those into the church? And what happens if we took just the spirit of loving on people from the church into business and started melding that more and more together? And so the passion just started igniting of like, man, what would it look like if this world was more integrated? And by that I mean, like, sometimes I hate, we're in Minneapolis right now, and sometimes I hate walking around downtown because it just feels like a concrete jungle. Like, what happens what happened to gravel roads and riding horses and stuff like that, which I don't want to go back to by any means. Don't get me wrong. I loved having an electric car and doing all that stuff. But at the same time, we have this segmentation between, you go to church on a Sunday morning, you go to work Monday through Friday from this hour to this hour, and then you go home and you spend your time. It's very segmented versus like a farmer. A farmer gets up and does chores in the morning, and during the day spends time with his family, and then does some chores at night, and then harvest comes. You have busy seasons and you've got slower seasons, and those seasons and rhythms will always be adjusting. But what would it look like if we played, worked, loved on our friends and family, and did some passion projects and hobbies that we enjoyed all together, where they overlap and it's kind of messy, but they overlap and it's exciting and it's more exploratory than this, here's this box, here's this box, here's this box. So I don't know if I actually answered your question at all.
Well,
there,
that makes a lot of sense. I think, with hindsight, some of this stuff, initially you don't really have words for it, but I think, you and I came to similar conclusions with a slightly different process, but it's a similar idea that, we have, well, I would say I felt like a second class citizen. Like if I care about my faith, I want to live this life well. Well, I want to do that to the best of my ability, but I kind of, these models, these kind of bifurcated silo models that you're kind of referencing, where it's like church is over here, your job and family are over here, and they're separate things, and there's very little connection between the two. And it's this idea of like breaking out of that mind. It's really just a mindset that that if we're all about, if we're taking ministry and we want to live on purpose seriously, that business and a financial model is basically necessary. And then you think about all the people that business impacts. You got church and ministry stuff, maybe about one day a week, or it could be a nonprofit, but like a business is open 5, 6, 7 days a week. You're living and being impacted by that, by the product, by the culture, by everything. And
yeah.
So it's like it sounds like you were able to see a more exaggerated version of like, in America, a lot of stuff just works because of who we are and the momentum, but like you're able to see it not working. And like, if they were able to get those cylinders hitting on all cylinders again, like, you bring back jobs, you're able to build houses, the water is paid for by all that economic activity. So it's like self-propagating, sustainable.
Yeah, it's a self-sustaining model. If you can, now you need certain things to exist. You need some natural resources, or yeah, you need certain things to exist to make that work. But at the end of the day, like, we should be trying to serve the people closest to us. And this world is gotten connected and essentially became just one big economy in a lot of ways. But like, how would it work if hey, your friend needs something and you have that thing, you're willing to give that thing, and or provide that service to them. And yeah, I'm kind of, it's making me want to go back to the horse-drawn days. But um, yeah, I love the idea of using whatever talent and resources you've been given to steward it for other people. And for some people, that's money. For some people, that's not money. And for some people, it's maybe great communication skills. And they can go do something completely different than somebody who's running a large business. Or there's maybe small businesses that provide an excellent service for people that is necessary. I mean, if my water heater breaks tomorrow, I know who I'm going to call because I've used them once and it provides an excellent service. They don't need to be a big company. They can be a small shop and have a great family life. That's awesome. And so I just love the idea that we're all created differently and we all have different gifts, and we need to more and more not use those gifts for ourselves and use them for other people. And then hopefully by that example, other people learn to do the same. And that could be in money and how we use our money, or in time, or just mental energy and being there for somebody. So
So as you were, learning from these experiences and headed into your career, maybe share a little bit of how that impacted your kind of worldview or how you approached your career as you're figuring out, what the first step or two in life is.
well, the first step was, I think I'm still trying to figure that out as a 33-year-old. So I don't know if I have that answer, but um, my original plan, if I was going to put it that way, my own plan that I concocted for myself was, I want to go into the business world and I want to learn as much as I can about good business practices, good leadership, and I want to suck it all up like a sponge. And then I want to go to a place where I can create self-sustaining environments. And so there's a lot of maybe third world countries, or even in America, just some lower income areas that you can create a self-sustaining community, or be a part of the community and help the whole tide rise. So that was my original plan. My new plan, that as I'm trying to figure it out, is more so, well, what if you kind of did multiple things? And Jason, you and I have talked about this a lot. Like, my dream would probably not to be working with or at any like specific thing at one time, but it's to have multiple things going on at one time. So maybe Gratuitous Funds is a great product that's expanding access for more people to get amazing opportunity to get into great deals. And so as I am in relationship with friends and through my church and at my kids' school and things like that, I can bring that to the table as something that I'm connected to that might benefit them. And then at the same time, I've been in the business world for over a decade now. What happens if, even in my local school where my kids go to school, what if I brought some ideas to them on how to maybe manage their finances a little bit better, or to structure communication so that parents feel more involved around certain things, and just to take that in. So it's more occupational based now as I'm thinking through it, and more talent based. And just to be a blessing to other people. What do I know, or what am I uniquely gifted at that I can use as a resource, not for my own good, but for the benefit of others, so that everybody can benefit from that.
Absolutely. And it sounds like, you correct me, it sounds like there's a theme of like sustainability that comes from business that's inherently just part of any successful enterprise. Is if you do it well long enough, you're giving your gifts well enough long enough, you end up with some resources, which is a lever that creates that opens up the creativity to give your gifts in ways you otherwise would be, a W-2 wage slave, or different ways that you would be stuck, or otherwise occupied with most of your time.
Yeah, totally. I mean, like it or not, what I said before, you have to. There's fundamentals about when you're in business for a little bit. Business at the end of the day can be applied to so many different outputs, but it's the same concepts through and through. And whether you're in a ministry or a nonprofit or a for-profit business, it all needs to be purposeful. Otherwise, it's not going to last. And so, good financial management. If you can't make money, or if you are wasting your money, or not watching your finances, it doesn't matter what organization you work for or what organization you lead. You're done. Like, that's it. You're not going to make it very long. And so, how sustainable? Like, great idea. Thanks for doing that for 3 years, but it's like you're done. So now your impact is gone. So you want to obviously you make a lasting impact, hopefully, but your continued impact would be done at that point. If you run a great organization that is financially so strong, but you can't lead a culture that makes people feel valued and cared for, you can throw all the finances at the world at it. You're going to be running through employees and hiring new employees every single graduating class. And all of your efforts are going to be spent on just trying to grow through both a young workforce, which is not bad at all. But if it's constantly turning over, then you're not going to make it very long. So there's that piece of it. And then also just on the world stage, it's business is good business practices help make things sustainable. It's not the whole puzzle, but it's one piece that makes things sustainable. And so, man, I really, as much as nonprofits need to make money and they need to raise money, it'd be really cool to see. To see where nonprofits eventually become self-sustaining. And that's not possible for all models that are out there. But man, a self-sustaining business model, from a not for-profit business to a nonprofit business, from a ministry to an orphanage, that would be really cool at some point. And I think that's what I mean by sustainability. And hopefully there's the opportunity to work in that for both business and ministry and nonprofits, and hopefully different communities in the future too.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. I was just talking to a pastor the other day, actually. I think part of what you're saying is the leadership skills to take an organization to pursue a vision at the medium level, high level, really high level. Those are all the same. Your business model is a little bit different for how you sustain the vision, but that I've kind of said, like, nonprofits could benefit from being a little bit more business-like, in the sense, stronger. If you have a stronger business model, then you're more sustainable. You don't have to go ask for money as much, and then businesses in turn would benefit from being a little more purpose-driven. But it's like the same skill sets. And this pastor actually was just like, just learning to there's a little mentality shift of thinking a little bit more business-like, where making money is not a bad thing. In fact, if you do it the right way, it helps fuel your purpose even higher.
Yeah.
But that was a little bit of a mental shift for him.
Yeah.
Well, I know we got the title of the podcast is Take Your Mind, so purpose is kind of a big part of it. But I was just curious, with the different, sometimes I think generationally, like every generations are kind of smashed now with the acceleration of technology.
Yeah.
Would you say in your generation, that whether it's purchasing decisions or working for a company, like how much, where did like deeper meaning for you come from? And do you think that's like a more important thing to this generation than past generations?
Well, I definitely would say that it's more important to the latter generations. I think we can see that just in social media. I mean, when something goes viral, it's one day that the whole world knows about something, and both for good and for bad, right? Like it helps shed light on things that maybe aren't acceptable in some ways, like slave labor and child labor and different things that a lot of companies have dealt with over the past decade. But it also can be really helpful too. If something's going on in the world, you know about it. And the way that technology has changed, being able to do GoFundMe's instantly and help a family out that just lost a loved one or has some unforeseen medical bills, it's great. I do think that the world has definitely prioritized purpose and purpose, and like even some of this is where it gets a little dicey, right? Like we always hear this term ESG get thrown around in the world of economics and personal finance and investing, but ESG has almost gone too far. Like now when you're putting regulation around ESG, like does that give anybody any free will to pick and choose anymore? And is ESG and ESG, environmental, social governance, that's what that stands for. And it's basically this label that's put on different investments to make them hold to certain standards in those areas. Well, if a company wants to just get big really fast, pretty easy to say to take a model of buy one, give one, and all of a sudden it matches one of the criteria for ESG, but that doesn't necessarily make it a good product. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's getting sourced from a great place. So there's a lot of this focus right now on where you essentially vote with your money these days, right? You vote with your voice on Facebook, which is essentially washed out because everybody has a voice on Facebook or Instagram. But really the voting power comes in money. These big corporations that do something incorrectly or the way that the populace doesn't want them to go, within one day they're boycotted and they're worried about money, so they're retracting that. Now that doesn't necessarily change the fact that they did it in the first place. And so are they doing it for money or are they doing it because they believe that it was wrong? That's for us all to decide individually. But I do think there's a higher importance on that right now. For me personally, I would say that I am conscious about voting with my money in purchases and things that I support, but that doesn't mean that I purchase things from places or companies that believe what I believe or see the world the way that I see the world. I believe in excellence, and there's some great companies that don't necessarily share the same values, but they're excellent companies. And I want them to continue to be excellent. And yeah, I would love for more values to be aligned, but that isn't up to me. And people have the freedom to choose what they want to do, but they're doing something with excellence, and that is worthy of getting a vote. so I don't put too much pressure on that for me personally. Yeah,
One of the,
I guess I don't. And ESG to me is kind of it's just a label that you can throw onto some things that doesn't really matter a lot.
yeah, one of the ones for me, it's an easy one to pick on, but like you take like an Amazon, there's all kinds of studies that look at the impact it's had on small business, and in America we generally skew towards innovation, creative destruction is a good thing, and I'm very sympathetic to those things, but there is an impact on the small business, and the
True.
more people that can be in business for themselves. I think overall, it gives you more independence. You feel more connection to your work versus just being another number in a larger organization.
Yeah.
But it's also, where else can you get 2-day shipping or less, 12-hour shipping? These efficiencies of scale. So
Yeah.
ones like that are a little bit more interesting to think about. There's definitely pros and cons. ESG though, you brought that up. It's kind of interesting.
Well, can I just one
Yeah.
comment on what you just said? A few years ago, my wife and I moved from a pretty cute little downtowny type of area to the suburbs, and man, the amount of chain restaurants and chain retail shops, like I get sick of it. It's like yeah, they produce food, but it's by no means like helping the small business owner, the person that's exploring a passion that they have and trying to make it work. And so when we try to go out for dinner, even now, it's in suburbia, it's generally we're passing over the chain ones to try a new little hole in the
Yeah, yeah.
wall sometimes to support their business. Because at the end of the day, going back to the whole, like, we all have different gifts and talents. Buffalo Wild Wings is not the only company that can make a chicken wing.
Mm-hmm.
And there's some really darn good chicken wings made in the backyards of some people's houses that, man, if they had a restaurant, would be really good. And if they open a shop, I want to support that. They might not have the big TVs, but man, it would be cool to see them explore their passions that they have, and to exercise that and to support it as much as you can.
Yeah. So you like to buy local, when you can, especially when it comes to restaurants and things like
Right.
that. Spending money on all the time.
Yep. And you're not going to do it every time. You're still going to buy from Amazon every once in a while. You're still going to go to Target for your groceries rather than the local farmers market, because it's a convenience thing as life gets busy. But also just being aware of it, I think, is the first step, and then doing everything you can to support those smaller businesses too.
Sure. Yeah. With ESG, and Elon Musk talked a little bit about it. I started hearing about it, more like 5, 6, 7 years ago, and having kind of tracked the social entrepreneurship movement and different groups of people that are, trying to make a difference in a new and fresh way. The ESG stuff came up, but as I did some thinking about it all, I was like, when you're making a product or service, like, your impact, when you think about your impact, what's the number one way your impact? Well, it's literally the product or service you're offering. Like, if you're giving people drugs, but then you go off and plant a couple trees or something, like, that doesn't offset
Yeah.
itself. And
Right.
with ESG, it's almost like, well, I think Elon pointed out, and this was specifically with Tesla, but I think there was some car company or someone that, I don't necessarily buy into all this stuff, but carbon's the enemy, and ESG buys into that. And there was like a car company manufacturer that made all these cars, and they smogged up the world, and they had a higher ESG rating than Tesla did because, I don't know, they didn't have union workers. I don't know what it was, but
Yeah.
just kind of like the how that's being used now, almost to control corporate boards. Like, here's the ideology that you must follow, and if you don't, even if it doesn't make any sense, you have to do it anyways, Otherwise, we're
Yeah.
going to penalize you. We won't buy into your businesses. You won't get investment and all these things versus, focusing on the essence of just creating a great product, great culture, and let that impact emanate from that.
Yeah. And some of that whole movement is kind of like most things where it actually started from a pretty decent place.
Yeah.
And like a place to keep the world clean and to uh, include a more diverse board and a workforce, and those are amazing things that everybody should be thinking about. To throw a label on it or to regulate it is sometimes hard and might not allow for everybody to actually thrive in that environment. But it's kind of almost shifted too far, where what was a really good thing coming from a really good place to now a little bit maybe
Yeah.
too strict.
I feel like independent of people's specific beliefs, their exact worldview, I do believe there's a deep desire in humans for deeper meaning. And so I've kind of seen two like parallel things that show up that to meet that need that are kind of coming from a compromised motive, and then the real thing. And now it's kind of like discerning like what is here because they actually care, or what's here because they want to look like they care and get everyone to follow them, but it's not really coming from an authentic
Yeah,
place.
it all comes down to the heart. It really does. Like, are you doing this for reasons that are going to be self-promoting and be promoting for you making more money, or is it coming down to your heart of to serve people and to include people and to love on people and to bless the world, really, at the end of the day? Like, what's the heart motive? Because you can do anything outwardly without the right motive, and that's not gonna it's only a matter of time before it actually comes out.
For sure. Yeah, I think you see, especially in the social media age, where it's like you can only fake it so long. So it's actually more efficient just to be true from the get go, because it's gonna
Yeah.
circle.
Yep.
Cool. Well, we like to end usually on a question, talking a little more future oriented. When you think about the next, I don't know, 3, 5, even 10 years out, where do you think, whether it's business or nonprofits, when thinking about impact or innovation, where things are headed, where do you see the greatest opportunity, or how are you thinking about the near short term future?
Sure. Well, I guess right in front of us, what we're doing at Gratuitous Funds is really cool in the investment space. We've definitely seen a trend towards alternatives. We've Yeah, I don't know if you've talked about this on any of your other podcasts with your other guests, but man, it's cool to see the world becoming more accessible, and that includes to alternatives and to really good investment products. And as we've talked about this entire time, like, you need money to use money and to use it for good. And there's always been that kind of standard way of investing, and you got to save in your 401k first and then pay off debt and maybe open a Roth IRA, and then, but all the other stuff was kind of a shot in the dark after that. That was super hazy. That, oh yeah, I know somebody that owns an Airbnb or that owns a apartment building, but I don't know how to do that and I can't do that. So it's been really cool to see the world of investments becoming really cool, and Gratuitous is front and center of that, of making good institutional deals more accessible to a wider audience that 5 years ago just wasn't available to them.
Sure.
So that's pretty cool. Man, for the future, well, for me personally, I want to kind of keep pulling this thread of integration. For me personally, man, I love my family. I love my kids. I love spending time with them, and I want to show them that they aren't second, and that they are included in life. They're not second place in life. They're not even in first place in life, honestly. Like after God and my wife, like they got third. So so yeah, I'd like to continue to pull this thread for me personally about integration, and we saw a little bit of that in COVID actually, with the pandemic of people working from home more and having a more integrated approach to life. We'll see how that actually plays out in the next
I heard
probably 2 years.
Amazon was just offering to help people out if they weren't willing to return to the office, basically.
Yeah, and there's definitely, I mean, that's a whole nother rabbit trail that we can talk about for a long time, but there's the pros and cons, right? Like you're not as creative, you can't work as well as in a team environment when you're not in person, and it's different talking to somebody through a screen than if we were sitting in the same room. But at the same time, a lot of people got to pick up their kids from school and not have them do an after school program until 5 o'clock. And I would imagine the benefit to our kids when they can actually understand that time period of their life was pretty great, having their parents actually be there when they got done with school. And so that whole idea of integration is still heavily on my mind. And then even the integration of, I just joined a board a few months ago, that's in the nonprofit world, and just starting to continue to integrate business practice into a nonprofit board and do something that's not business related at all. It's actually around foster care. And so what does that look like to help them become more and more sustainable every single day? So I think the world is playing right now with this idea of what was business and what is business now, and moving into the future, that will still be shaken out. And then for me, it's just how do I bring the best version of myself to all the things that I say yes to, and say yes to the things that are going to be a blessing to other people and not for myself.
Yeah, that's so good. That kind of reminds me everyone's purpose journey or how they're approaching life is a little bit different. We worked with this company that came up with some of the branding for our business, and you share a lot about who you are, what you're trying to accomplish, and what came to the surface was just this idea of a journey. And what I really like about that, and even just hearing from your story, is like I think we all relate to seasons where we have a little bit more clarity, like further out. And then there's seasons where it's like, I don't know, I just got, one foot in front of the other. But it's you don't have to figure it out. But if you do have like lots of clarity, that's like really powerful too. And then like each season like is just so different. Whether you're married, not married, you get your kids at different ages. Different points in your career, starting off, scaling, liquidating, legacy. Like everyone's kind of at a different spot, but like just doing our best to enjoy the journey and the different steps and lessons we're learning along the way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's sometimes I feel bad saying it because I feel like in so many ways the journey has been blessed so far, but there's a lot of people out there that they don't have an option but to work a 9-to-5 job, and maybe even 2 or 3, and that's also a reality that they don't have that flexibility. And my wife, I used to be terrible at it, but my wife challenged me a few years ago to just start dreaming, and I was a very logical process person, but just start dreaming about like, what are the things that get me excited? What are the things that give me energy where I could do that for hours on end and time would just fly by, and I would look at the clock being like, wow, we've been doing that for so long. And so whatever stage that somebody's in, I would just encourage to dream about like, what are the talents that you have And what are the things that make you come alive? It might be in work and it might not be. And find as many ways to create an environment where you can work more and more, even if it's 10 minutes or 15 minutes or 30 minutes into your day of just doing those things that are life-giving, because those things that are life-giving for you are a blessing to other people. And that's yeah, it's hard to do and hard to start dreaming it if you're not in it. But eventually, now I probably dream too much and I come up with too many wild ideas that my wife's now like, "Hey, remember what I said back then? Yeah, you should
You're good.
cut it back a little bit."
Yeah. No, I think when you say some of that stuff, that's absolutely true. And part of why we do a podcast, part of why we want to share. That's why we're passionate about entrepreneurship and like an alternative path that's not just like investments, although that's part of it. In order to achieve like your full potential, your creativity, it doesn't always require a business or some form of entrepreneurship, but it is one of the most efficient ways to get there. Not everyone's called and meant to do it, but for this community, it's like, figuring out what are those purposes, those passions, those ideas that bring you alive. And almost all of them would benefit from either time or money, and time usually is a form of money. So it's just super important, in your 20s, 30s, if you have an inclination, leaning that way at all, to take a little bit more risk in those decades that, if you learn from a few mentors, have a few bumpers, like you'll end up a lot further in your 30s, 40s, 50s than you would otherwise.
Yeah. And there's lots of people that would be willing to mentor people. So if you have something that you're interested in, but you just don't know how to fit it in your day or fit it in your week, like go ask somebody that's doing it and put yourself out there, and don't be afraid to ask questions, because people want to help. And in a lot of ways, you'll find people that their passion isn't work related at all. It's actually just to mentor people. And if you ask the right person, you're going to run into somebody who just wants to mentor somebody and take you under their wing and teach you how to do something. And maybe that leads to something, and maybe not. Or maybe you realize, man, this mentor meant a lot in my life, and it changed the trajectory of my family or my own life. And now you have a passion for that. So even after your 9-to-5 job that you go to, you can, in the evenings, mentor people. And maybe that's a passion that you have in the future. So just continuing to explore and continuing to dream and ask questions is a big deal. And follow the things that get you excited, the things that are there that time just flies by.
That's so good. Well, maybe those are a couple of good topics for the next podcast we do together. Just like entrepreneurship. How did you get into one, become one? What are the resources? Like for a lot of people, I think you read a Robert Kiyosaki or you get inspired, but then it's like, all right, then what? How do we connect from where I'm at today to be able to pursue some of those visions at a higher level?
Yeah, totally. I'd love to do it again. Let's do this again.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Austin. Good to connect. And we look forward to our next episode coming up next week. Thanks, Austin.
Yeah, thank you, Jason.
Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share.